Hello everyone, welcome to my video. In this video, I will explain organizational life cycle assessment, in the introduction to part 1. In the introduction part, there are 3 contents. First, the definition of organizational life cycle assessment. The second is the standard of organizational life cycle assessment. The third is the application of organizational life cycle assessment. Now let's start with the definition of organizational life cycle assessment. What is an organizational life cycle assessment? According to ISO/TS 14072, ISO 2014-C, organizational LCA or OLCA is a compilation and evaluation of the inputs, outputs, and potential environmental impacts of the activities associated with the organization adopting a life cycle perspective. OLCA applications may reveal environmental hotspots, where organizations should focus and intervene throughout the value chain and, in all products and operations involved in providing the portfolio. Figure 1 is the process of organizational life cycle, showing the importance of applying organizational life cycle assessment. Information collection and product category rules provide a solid foundation for organizational life cycle assessment, which can be used as a framework for long-term tracking of environmental performance and providing information to enterprise sustainability reports. The following is an elaboration of the criteria to be followed in an organizational life cycle assessment. What are the standards that OLCA needs to follow, as shown in figures 2 and 3? The present technical specification, TS, is dedicated to the application of LCA to organizations. It, therefore, extends the application of ISO 14040 and ISO 14044 to all the activities of the organization. That means the reporting unit of the system allows coverage of different products and unit processes of any organization within the same LCA study. The introduction concludes with the application of organizational life cycle assessment. How is the application of OLCA different from LCA? OLCA mainly differs from previous LCA approaches by its object of study, the organization, from some other organization-oriented schemes by its perspective, the life cycle, from existing value chain approaches, because it is an environmental multi-impact assessment. Figure 4 shows the 5 steps of an organizational life cycle. The first stage is startup or existence phase. The second stage of an organizational life cycle is the growth stage, also known as the survival stage. The next stage is maturity, when the organization moves into a management hierarchy. The next stage is called the renewal stage. At this point, the organization's management structure will undergo an update from a hierarchical organizational structure to a matrix organizational structure. This change promotes organizational flexibility and creativity. The last stage of an organizational life cycle is the decay stage, which marks the death of the organization. Moving on to the next part, the overview of organizational life cycle assessment, we will be looking at the benefits of organizational life cycle assessment and specific situations for the implementation of OLCA. So, do you know what are the benefits that life cycle assessment can bring to organizations? Actually, the benefits can be arranged in 3 groups, namely, analytical goals, managerial goals and societal goals. Without further delay, let's look together at the first benefit: identify, evaluate, and interpret the significance of the environmental aspects related to the management systems. An insight into internal operations and value chain can be obtained. This is because OLCA helps the organization to understand the relationship between the activities and processes involved in the entire value chain and the environmental impacts of its product portfolio. Besides, the pressure on the environment can be reduced, as the actions of the organization are geared to reduce the overall resource consumption and the emission of impacting substances. The society is benefited as a whole. Secondly, OLCA is a strategic tool for comprehensive environmental assessment, which can lead to management decisions. It acts as a support for strategic decision-making by understanding risks and identifying impact reduction opportunities at different levels. For instance, on technologies, investments, and new product lines. Moreover, it can reduce operational costs. With an improved, more efficient management, not only from an environmental point of view will be resulted, but also in terms of costs. Thirdly, OLCA is a tool for decision-making, in order to prioritize the actions aiming at reducing environmental impacts considering products and unit processes of the organizations. This can be achieved by understanding risks and impact reduction opportunities. The organization is able to identify which areas are at risk and where opportunities exist for resource efficiency and emissions mitigation. Furthermore, environmental hotspots could be identified as well, especially those having a relevant contribution to the impacts. Apart from that, OLCA assists the performance tracking of an organization and trace the multi-criteria environmental improvements of the organizations. In fact, OLCA is a very appropriate framework for tracking the environmental performance over time, both at the inventory and impact level. Performance tracking is vital because it responds to multiple organizations' necessities. For example, it helps in tracing improvements in the environmental performance of the organization in reference to a certain internal or external target. Other than that, OLCA is a reporting of the environmental impacts of an organization over a given period of time. This can help establish a basis for environmental communication with stakeholders and reporting. For example, it can support reporting required by regulatory authorities via the analytical data it provides. In addition, the use of environmental tools by stakeholders can be enhanced. After proper reporting and communication of the organization's environmental awareness, it may also motivate consumers to adopt more environmentally friendly practices. Last but not least, OLCA improves the transparency, knowledge, control, and management of supply chain. By this, organizational procedures can be improved through increasing the knowledge and understanding of internal processes contributes to better management of operations along the value chain. For example, the development, improvement or expansion of systems for gathering and managing environmental and activity data may be encouraged by the demand for OLCA data, which in turn benefits overall organization management control systems. It's time for quiz again. Which of the following is not a benefit of OLCA? A. Improved transparency, knowledge, control, and management of its supply chain. B. Assist the performance tracking of an organization. C. Resource consuming, mainly due to the large amount of data needed. D. Reporting of the environmental impacts of an organization over a given period of time. The answer is C. 2.2 Specific situations for the implementation of OLCA, experience-based pathways. OLCA Guide considers the complexity that arises from evaluating large organizations and possibilities, not only because of size, but also because of differences in the sector, region, and experience. This complexity may not apply to small and medium-sized organizations, so specific instructions are included in the guide to further clarify and guide them. The most common paths that can lead an organization to OLCA considered three main dimensions which: 1. The data of the organization owns for its site. 2. The organization has information about its product life cycle. And 3. The organization evaluates the entire organization and value chain, but only one environmental indicator. An organization's particular path can also be a combination of multiple paths, because there is no single path for every situation. In Pathway 1, limited initial environmental experience and information. The first approach refers to organizations with little or no experience with environmental analysis tools, and therefore no prior comprehensive environmental assessment. OLCA can help develop the general concept of environmental performances that helps to set goals, prioritize environmental measures, and make improvements. OLCA helps prioritize the analysis of where value can be added, at the organization or product level, to identify high-impact activities and products in their own businesses and their value chains. Pathway 2, Existing Environmental Assessment Gate to Gate. The most common site assessment framework is Enterprise Ecological Balance and Environmental Audit, as key elements of the Environmental Management System, EMS. OLCA applications enable organizations to identify opportunities for further improvement throughout the value chain, both between suppliers and at the end of life and life of their products. This approach has great potential, as more than 300,000 organizations in 167 countries have passed ISO 14001 certified environmental management systems. Through the development of EMS in their organization, they had reached high maturity. Therefore, additional improvements at this level may result in an unfavorable cost-benefit ratio. Thus, OLCA can serve as a tool to complement and update an organization's EMS by providing an interface for product evaluation and broadening the horizon from field to value chain improvement. Pathway 3: Existing environmental life cycle assessment at the product level. This is another approach for the organizations that have evaluated the environmental performance of a significant portion of their product portfolio, and now want to evaluate their entire organization. OLCA will provide a more complete picture of an organization's environmental performance, rather than just the individual results of previously evaluated products. For example, it will help identify which business units, brands, regions, or facilities research has a significant impact, and whether internal activities, often overlooked in product LCA, for example, employee commuting and travel, or capital equipment, have a significant share of an organization's performance. In addition, OLCA can support the implementation of consistent and specific environmental strategies across brands or businesses. Simplified product LCA methods, such as carbon footprint or water footprint, can serve as a starting point for OLCA. They fall partly into the product LCA path described here, and also in Pathway 4, described in the following section, regarding the assessment of single environmental indicators at the organizational level. For organizations starting to use both tools, can define a hybrid approach between paths 3 and 4. Pathway 4, Existing single indicator environmental assessment at the organizational level and including value chain. The organization has assessed the environmental performance of the organization and its value chain for single impact category indicators. The most well-known methodology for this type of assessment is the GHG Protocol Scope 3 standard. There are other approaches based on this standard that assess GHG emissions and water. The OLCA framework considers environmental multiple impact assessments, which can identify impacts other than climate change or water use and thus illuminate trade-offs between impact categories. The range of environments assessed in this approach is broader, but OLCA may also use for data collection procedures and tools developed in broader environmental scope, depending on the individual organization and overall analytical framework. Therefore, a modular extension of the impact categories assessed is a promising solution to this approach. Here is a small quiz. Could small and medium organizations implement OLCA? Yes, but there will be specific instruction for these small and medium organizations according to United Nations Environment Programme. For example, identify direct and indirect activity and bring them together in the life cycle inventory analysis as well as priorities for data collection and preferences for specific data.